Hello there and welcome to a reaction video. Not my reaction, your reaction. Your community's reaction to the news that Transport Tycoon was acquired by Atari was quite a big one. So let's get into that. Now, there were several key points that came across from the community reaction, so I'm going to go through them, add my take and some more information. But remember, it's the 30th anniversary of Transport Tycoon being released next week, so on the Friday I've got a live stream. Check out my scheduled live stream on YouTube if you want to take part in the big games that we're going to be doing there. Right, the first thing. Now, the first thing was OpenTTD. Many people love OpenTTD, and that's the open source remake of Transport Tycoon Deluxe. And I can understand people's opinions here. There's a lot of people that are worried that this acquisition will affect OpenTTD. Whether it will or won't for sure, we don't know. My feeling is it probably won't, but there's lots of different angles on it. And there's some people that think there's a legal issue with OpenTTD being created out of a IP which is now owned by Atari, and there's some people that don't think it's an issue for a number of reasons. For example, like you don't need the original game files to run it and stuff. And people do point out that there is an Open RCT2, the Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 remake, and that was from that is owned by Atari as well. But there is a key difference there, and that is you need the original game files to run OpenRCT2, where you don't need that for OpenTTD. OpenTTD is completely independent. Now, that could be good and it could be bad. You don't know. It could be because it's independent, it might not get touched. But because it's independent, it might become a target. I don't know. It's a whole legal and strange thing that I'm not going to go into much further, apart from to say that I too also hope they do not touch OpenTTD. OpenTTD has been refined for more than 20 years now and is a very special, fantastic free game. So hopefully Atari's handling of the licensing and stuff does not interrupt with OpenTTD, but we cannot say for sure. Next up is general skepticism about Atari. Big brands can often get bad names in communities, especially when they are meddling with things that are beloved by so many people. Transport Tycoon is still a good game, especially considering it's 30 years old. It was well made by Chris in those original days, and there's a reason why it did really well in its time. But for them to have this beloved thing, to have them own it and them to be this big corporation, you got to remember that in the early days, like in the early days of gaming, Atari was one thing, and what Atari is now is not the same. There's been acquisitions and sales. My understanding is that Atari got bought out by a company, and then that company might have got bought out or something like that, but then later that company changed their name to Atari. So Atari we know now isn't kind of the Atari that we knew before, but it kind of includes it. It's kind of like if Tesco's bought out Asda and then some years later said, oh, we're now called Asda. Is it Asda? I don't know. But to use a strange analogy, there's a lot of distrust in the community. I think a lot of that just comes from it being a big corporation, but also some of it probably comes from the handling of other IPs as well. Originally, Roller Coaster Tycoon, that series was done by Chris as well, and later that was then taken on and done by Atari. And we got things like Roller Coaster Tycoon World, but then there was some other ones, some mobile side games that really weren't the thing, but had a theme with a label slapped on it. And I think a lot of people didn't like what they did with that series. So a lot of the community are like, I really hope they don't ruin this series the way that they feel that they ruined the Roller Coaster Tycoon series. And that leads into the next one, which is the worry about a mobile game. So a lot of these IPs that companies acquire, they get the name and they make a new little game for mobile, something relatively quick and easy compared to a big PC title. And don't get me wrong, development's hard, but in comparison. And then they just give it a theme of an IP that they've got and a title. If I remember correctly, there was some sort of rail shooter game that was linked to Roller Coaster Tycoon that I think Atari put out there, and I don't think it did well. They did a few mobile games, including a different sort of puzzle game that had the Roller Coaster Tycoon theme. So I think there's a lot of kind of concern that come from the history of what Atari's been doing with some of these, and other developers and publishers too, where mobile games are just getting pumped out and with a label slapped on from something that they've had before. And there's a lot of kind of worry that that's going to happen, and then the game's not going to be very good that they put out. There's going to be a lot of pay to win in there, or DLC, or coins, and this sort of stuff that we get with the in-app purchases of a lot of mobile games. Now, might they do that? Maybe, but probably a good deal of you might not realise there was already a mobile Transport Tycoon game. So Transport Tycoon was originally brought out in 1994. The deluxe version with the world editor and so forth came out in 1995, pretty much straight after it. But then, in 2013, around the 20th anniversary, they brought out a mobile version of the game. Now, I don't know who owned the IP at the time. Presumably it was Chris and his team still, but there is a mobile version of Transport Tycoon. And this is where some of the confusion came from some of the articles that I saw. So when the news broke that Atari acquired OpenTTD, a lot of the articles looked like they had incorrect images. And that's because after making Transport Tycoon and Transport Tycoon Deluxe, Chris went on later, after working on Roller Coaster Tycoon, went on to do Locomotion. And the mobile game of OpenTTD, released in 2013, heavily leaned on Locomotion because Locomotion was supposed to be the spiritual successor to Transport Tycoon. But it didn't do as well for some reason. And I've only played it a tiny bit, and there was a lot of things that, coming from Transport Tycoon and playing OpenTTD, that I didn't like about Locomotion. And if you'd like, I could do a separate video about that. Put it down in the comments if you want to see it. But the mobile game for Transport Tycoon was based off a lot of Locomotion, which is why the screenshots of Transport Tycoon on mobile look like Locomotion. And because that was the most recent game in the series, or something that was being promoted the most, I think that's what a lot of the news articles have picked up, rather than the original Transport Tycoon. In fact, if you go over to the Transport Tycoon website, it's still celebrating the 20th anniversary, like 9 or so years ago. And there's an interview with Chris on there and some other people, which is actually quite interesting to read if you've got the time. But most of it on there is all about, hey, new mobile game, and the kind of like reviews for it and all of that sort of stuff. You can't even get the mobile game on the Google Play Store anymore. The link just doesn't work. It is available on Amazon and Android, not Android, sorry, iOS. But I don't own an iOS device or a Kindle Fire Stick to be able to get hold of that game and give it a try. It costs $7 still, and you can still buy it. You can still go to Amazon and buy Transport Tycoon for mobile. And there's some pictures on there which I've probably got in front of my face at the moment. So people are concerned about them making a mobile game, that's already happened. So it would be a new mobile game or a more mobile game. I have the same concerns. I don't see a mobile game working very well for Transport Tycoon or like something else. They're going to do spin-offs. It's going to be a spin-off, isn't it? They're going to have some sort of like they did with Roller Coaster Tycoon with the rail shooter. And how is that Roller Coaster Tycoon? It's a rail shooter game. But if they do spin-offs on mobile, I won't like it because I don't think it will be a good use of the IP. But we'll have to see what they do. So for those of you who are concerned about a mobile game, there already is one. And it's actually, from what I can tell, not too bad, because it is just the reimagined, fixed-up version of Transport Tycoon with the Locomotion kind of graphics and interface. Chris was actually slightly involved with the making of the mobile app. He was quoted as saying, "I wouldn't say I was all that involved though." So he was involved, but not much, he reckons. He didn't do hardly any of the coding, but was involved with getting him, in with the project. So that's the mobile game. On to concern, idea, thought, community reaction number 4 of 6. And this one is a little bit of reminiscing. A lot of the community was saying that they're interested in the classical graphics and gameplay and simplicity of games like Transport Tycoon. And I'm going to actually bring out a video of me doing a one-off Let's Play of the original Transport Tycoon. So watch out for that. I'll probably release it on the 30th anniversary. But if they did a remaster and stayed true to it, I think some people would probably like that. It would be like a touched up view into the past, and you'd be able to get it and enjoy it, and it would probably work a little bit better than now. I mean, you can't even install the current Transport Tycoon. Like, I've got a couple of discs to hand here. This one's the original Transport Tycoon. The other one, I think, is on my computer for Deluxe. And if you try and install these in Windows 11, it just goes, no, you can't. But if you get DOSBox and do a little bit of typing and stuff, you can get these running through that DOSBox emulation. But to have a game, a version of Transport Tycoon, which is remastered and just works on modern operating systems, that would be nice. But nobody needs that, right? If they do it and do a good job of it, fine. I mean, you know what? I will definitely be buying it. Mostly so I can show you guys it, but there we go. And penultimately, comparisons to similar games. A lot of people were making references to similar games that had come out and been rebooted, and like Dungeon Keeper and stuff like that, where the IP had either been changed or moved, or it had been a significant period of time since the game was created, and then like they came out and did a remastered version. So there was a lot of comparison to other games as well. So similar to people talking about what happened with Roller Coaster Tycoon and stuff like that, because they brought out World and the spin-offs, and yeah, it's interesting to see, and the general kind of position from the community on similar games and what have happened to them is they turned into what people generally called cash grabs. Which makes sense. Like, if you've got something and you can do little effort and try and make a load of money out of it, as a business, that is something you might try and do. So, might they do that with Transport Tycoon, with some sort of cash grab, with a remastered version or something like that? They're going to try and do something with it, right? Why would you buy something unless you just wanted to finish your collection? Because from what I understand now, and I'm not sure this is right, but I think so, I think they own all of the Transport Tycoon franchise, and they own all of the Roller Coaster Tycoon franchise now. Atari do, or at least own or leased the rights to all of them. And if that's true, then I think they might do something. I think at the beginning of the conversation of the first video, I was like, I don't think they're going to do anything with this. But now I'm leaning towards, I think they will. I think something is going to be coming. So it'd be interesting to see what is going to be coming, whether it's going to be that mobile game we talked about before or a remastered version. So they've done things like this in the past, and they might well do it again with Transport Tycoon. And there's also a lot of nostalgia amongst the community. A lot of love and affection for established things. You guys love Transport Tycoon and Deluxe. You also love OpenTTD. Locomotion has some love as well. And also there's a good community around some of the more modern games that are just like those older games in the kind of basic gameplay that they have, like Transport Fever 2. This love and affection for the classic games is very strong, and the nostalgia that we look at those games at makes it difficult for people to see what might come in the future. Overall, there is a lot of gentle distrust. People are not happy. They're worried. They are worried that Atari are going to take away something that we've had for many, many years in the form of OpenTTD. They're worried that they're going to take something that was an absolutely fantastic game many years ago and make spin-offs of crazy, ridiculous games with microtransactions like they have done with other games as well. But I want to finish on a small note of optimism. There is no reason why it isn't possible for Atari to come round and give us something absolutely fantastic. After all, a lot of brilliant games are still being made these days. And looking back at Transport Tycoon and the kind of evolution of those sorts of games into games like Transport Fever, you could end up with a Transport Tycoon 2, which is absolutely stonkingly brilliant. Fantastic even. So let's be quietly optimistic if we can, maybe. I think a lot of the points about distrust and so forth are potentially valid, but we haven't been proven right in that with Transport Tycoon. If Atari do something, let's just keep our fingers crossed that it is an absolute belter. And if it is, I'll be bringing it to you. Thank you very much for watching. Keep all your thoughts, ideas and questions down in the comments coming. They've been brilliant so far. For those of you who come in next Friday, I will see you then. And if not, I will see you soon in another video. Take care. Thank you very much. For now, goodbye.